Hey there. This is Coworking with Iris, where we talk about co-working and community. This is episode number 15, and I'm talking today with Felena Hanson of Hera Hub. And I'm excited to be talking about Felena, to be talking with Felena, who's created a network of co-working spaces exclusively for women. And I find this to be a really powerful model, because as a woman and as an entrepreneur, and a person who has supported women entrepreneurs, I do understand that there's a different need for women out there, a place that can both be supportive, but also sometimes we actually need different business skills taught to us than kind of a co-ed co-working space will offer. So I'm really excited to dive into this conversation this morning with Felena. And without any further ado, I'll introduce her now. Good morning, Felena.
Good morning, Iris. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being on the show with me today. It's wonderful to have you. So let's start off. Tell us about yourself. What's your co-working story?
Yeah, so Hera Hub was conceived from a need. This is in 2010. I started down the journey of the co-working world. I was running a marketing strategy business out of my house for 8 years. Part of that was working in marketing for technology startups. And I started my first business at age 30, not because I had a brilliant idea, but because I got laid off 3 times. 2 of the companies I worked for sold and 1 ran out of money. And I needed to control my own destiny, gosh darn it.
Yes.
And so I did what a lot of folks do, is take, a level of expertise and interest and turn it into a one-man band kind of business, and of which I ran for 8 years, again, out of my home. So I really, over that course of the 8 years, I was involved in some female-focused, as I would call it, organizations. One called Ladies Who Launch, as in launch businesses, and one called Women's Global Network, and worked with over about 1,000 entrepreneurs over about a 6-year period of time, helping them launch their business as well. And that, coupled with my need for community, feeling in isolation, working for and by myself, brought me to this concept of co-working. And the only space at the time in San Diego in 2010 that had just opened, and which actually I threw an event in right when they opened, was such a cool space. It was called The Hive. It's no longer in business, but it was concrete floors and brick walls and foosball tables and beer kegs and dogs running around. It was like super cool, as most co-working spaces are. But given that my clients that I was working with at the time were attorneys and CPAs and small banks, it just wasn't quite a culture fit for the demographic I was serving. And so I really just started to put some of the pieces of my life together and my community together and said, I'm going to create a space that is, we don't say exclusive to women, we say female focused. So here in San Diego, we have 350 members. We have 3 locations. And of the 350 members, we have 3 of which are men. So we have 3 male members in our community, which is awesome. They're incredibly brave, and no, I'm just teasing. It really is, it's creating an environment that is beautiful and tranquil and clean and very focused on being able to be open and vulnerable and ask the questions that we need to ask in business, and not feel like we should know that, or we should have that figured out, and giving women and men, if they want to be part of that conversation, that opportunity. So we don't sit around and sing Kumbaya. We get business done. But it's really about the environment and some of the programming and education that makes us different.
Wow, awesome. I'd love to expand on that last sentence just a little bit, but I'd also like to react to the fact that you're not exclusive to women, and thank you for that correction. So I find that really fascinating. I know that there are some spaces out there that are exclusive to women. sometimes co-working spaces can, that are just open co-working spaces, can have as few as 3 women participants. Are the men that are in your spaces, do they tend to be more of a men that are really comfortable hanging around women, or are they just men?
Or are they just men? One or the other. What are you implying, Iris?
I'm not sure what I'm implying there. Well, I have some friends who are super comfortable hanging out with like a whole bunch of my women friends, and we all get together for a hen squawk, and that dude is totally comfortable sitting in there with that hen squawk. Yes. And I have other male friends who I love dearly, who, you know, they're more comfortable hanging out with a lot of bros and a couple of women. Yeah. And they wouldn't be comfortable hanging out in that hen squawk. So that's kind of where that question is coming from.
Yeah, definitely. The gentlemen that are part of our community are very comfortable with that. And, you know, in one case, it's, I remember Mac is a web developer, and he, you know, he likes the environment. He likes the tranquility. We call it spa-inspired workspace, and it's convenient for him. We don't position our workspaces in the coolest, hippest downtown corridor of a city, and that's, you know, where a lot of spaces set up shop, which is great, but we're not targeting that, you know, young startup tech market, frankly. Our members are attorneys and CPAs and nonprofits and authors and writers and PR professionals. Yes, we have a little bit of tech. We have some social impact companies, of course, but we're serving a market that a lot of other, you know, traditional co-working spaces are not, frankly. And so when a gentleman enjoys that environment, you know, and they're respectful and they're there for the right reasons, and they're also very open to being vulnerable and, you know, being able to step into conversations where we push that a little bit, then great, you know, really. And it's, to your point, I spoke at a Startup Grind event last night, and I had a lot, you know, it was co-ed, and I had a lot of men in the audience like, why would you, you know, segregate yourself? And, you know, aren't you setting us back? And, you know, this and that. And I'm like, no, I'm not implying that, you know, women only always hang out with only women, and we're not even only women, you know, but it's about being in an environment and a community that is pro-women and is designed for women. And frankly, it works. It works extremely well for us. And what I like to say is different strokes for different folks. I mean, some people find, you know, the techie, you know, downtown co-working space, the WeWork, you know, for them, and that's awesome. But there are other people in the world that don't, you know, really find that environment to be the right environment for them.
Right. Absolutely. And I think, you know, across the board, we all know that there's so many different co-working spaces out there and different models that it really is different strokes for different folks. So I'm struck also by the comment that the men made last night, or some of the men made. And I actually didn't think about co-working spaces or you know, focused on women. Until I had a member in my community that here in Santa Cruz that was, you know, great friends with everybody in the space, was just is a powerhouse businesswoman, seemed to have, you know, so much, you know, on the outside sort of had it all together and knew what she was doing and was pitching her amazing thing to investors here and there and up and down the, you know, in the valley and everything. And we sat down one night and we had a couple drinks and we had a conversation. And what I realized coming out of that conversation was the struggle that she was going through internally in having to play a game in terms of getting investment that she didn't feel like she had the skills to play. Because she didn't, you know, because she had grown up as a girl who wasn't necessarily taught strong negotiating skills, strong finance, you know, how to handle finance in a company properly, how to speak to a VC whose people he works with are largely men. And so I think this conversation needs to be had because it's not about sexist or feminism. It's about how do we make sure that there is a level playing field, which means that everybody comes to the table ready to pitch to an investor or to build their business or whatever the ultimate goal is. And they do so through having been given the unique skills that their personality needs. And given that as women, we're often taught not to stand up for ourselves or not to negotiate, we need to be given those unique skills of negotiating that men are often nurtured with from a pretty young age.
Yeah, very true.
So stepping back into your statements earlier about opening your space and choosing to stay out of a downtown corridor, I really loved that you're talking about, really what I'm referring to these days as a neighborhood co-working space. So how does this affect your ability to take in members in San Diego? How does this affect your market?
It's great. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question. How does it affect it? It works for us. I mean, so we built the 3 locations here in San Diego. I opened my first location. Number one, I had, even prior to that, and just an absolute nightmare getting my first space. It was a complete disaster. Nobody would lease me space. And I still hate the commercial real estate world, frankly. But I'm sure you hear that a lot. Arch enemies. Why do we need to be on other sides of the table? But anyways, I opened my first space in August 2011. I opened my second space October 2012, and I opened second space in October 2012 and third space July 2013. So effectively, I opened 3 locations in 2 years.
Wow.
Because I, from day one, knew I wanted to build something bigger than myself. And I knew that I didn't want to be the person to, should the model be successful, which it is now in hindsight, I wanted to make sure that I was building something that could be systemized. Now, I don't think in systemized, process-driven world inherently. I'm a marketing and sales girl, but I was smart enough to know that was my first hire. I needed somebody to help me systemize and document everything. And that's part of the reason I built 3 locations in 2 years is I wanted to build it and break it and build it and break it again and again. And we did that. And I made a billion mistakes. I spent probably to the tune of $100,000 that I didn't need to spend just buying the wrong fixtures, furniture, equipment, making the wrong software decisions. I mean, you name it. I made that mistake. And in that decision to expand, not company owned, but rather taking a model that I had built and what I feel is a strong brand and allowing women in other cities, not only across the US, but across the world, as we start to take our first entry into our international expansion, the opportunity to take that model and learn from all the things that we've learned over the last 5 years and skip all those mistakes, but also to be able to step into a strong community because we are 1000% community first and space second. So really being able to connect our members from DC to San Diego, from Stockholm to DC to San Diego, from the various other cities that were on the edge, hopefully, of closing licensing agreements in right now. So it is a global community that I envision for Hera Hub of women and a few awesome men who really get it, who are truly collaborative in business and frankly change the way business is done, hopefully, in the long run. So the vision is to support over 20,000 women in the launch and growth of their business by 2020. So we're doing that through licensing expansion and also through my book that I just released a couple months ago called Flight Club, as in taking flight as an entrepreneur. And the book is really targeted towards women who feel stuck in corporate and want to lean out, as we call it, and launch their own business and giving them inspiration and tools to do that.
Wow. So much there to talk about. I will clarify, my question was asking about downtown cores tend to be more desirable, I think, for the larger co-working spaces, because they have, it's supposedly a little bit more walkable, or the business address is more desirable. I'm really enjoying the focus on that I've been having lately on neighborhood co-working spaces, as I'm referring to them. And a lot of my clients that have neighborhood co-working spaces, one of the struggles that they have is that they might not be, their space might not be walkable, meaning somebody doesn't just walk by naturally and say, oh, what is this place, and walk in. So the marketing might be a little bit different.
Yeah, but we gain members mostly through word of mouth, through community organizations, through hosting, female-focused organizations and initiatives at Hera Hub. So, having that stumble across type of scenario is actually, we don't actually want that, to be frank, because we have a pretty specific target market. And we do one of our locations, which is in Mission Valley in San Diego. Again, definitely not downtown, but it's in a building that has an atrium, so to speak, and folks are coming in to see other tenants in the building, and we're kind of front and center there. And we get I'd say one person a day that wanders in and is like, "What is this place? What is this, a spa?" And frankly, it's I don't know. I mean, it's not a benefit to us, frankly.
Yeah.
It's taking our time. I don't want to be, of course we're going to talk to them and explain what co-working is, and they may tell a cousin, who knows, but relying on visibility from, that perspective is not an issue for us. The walkability factor, I totally understand. We'd still look for locations where there is walkability. Just because you're you're not downtown doesn't mean you're in a non-walkable area. In Washington, D.C., our location, who was founded by Julia Westfall, is in D.C. proper, but it's not in downtown D.C. It's up near Friendship Heights. It's a couple blocks from the trolley, that's a San Diego statement, the subway. You're like, when did DC get a trolley? It's close to the subway stop. It's very walkable. I mean, there's food options. It's near the Bethesda border, which is a beautiful, beautiful part of the area. So relying on walk-in traffic is definitely not part of our business model.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think that the fact that you were able to build a network of 4 spaces based on word of mouth really speaks to the power of the community and the offering that you have. I really love that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you, before we went live today, we had a little bit of a discussion about your journey in your model, and you did touch a little bit just now on licensing. I'd love to ask you to just speak a little bit about your journey. I know that you started out with franchising your model. Would you be able to talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So when by the name of Sylvia Ma, who has a PhD in molecular biology and has worked in technology transfer. She's an amazing woman. And she early on came in and took some of the educational offerings we have and ended up taking over those educational offerings and running what's now called Hera Labs. She herself is an angel investor. And in early conversations with her, after we were open, it was not a back of the napkin idea. I had a full-fledged, profitable business, and I didn't realize she was an angel investor. And through conversations, found that out. So she ended up investing in our expansion, and that was a very organic conversation that we had. And she saw the vision and wanted to be part of it. So we started meeting with attorneys to see what our options were for expansion, because I'm not the woman to do this in Dallas or DC or Denver. It's really, providing that supportive, collaborative brand system model for somebody else to set up their own business and provide continued support for them.
Yeah.
So these very expensive, fancy attorneys got a hold of us and said, well, you have to franchise. This is the only way to go. And, I certainly did my homework and digging and, and okay, this is what we do. And what I learned over the course of a couple years is it frankly wasn't the right model for us. And yes, I had learned that the hard way, but thank goodness someone in the tech world developed the term pivot because we pivoted. And we moved to a licensing model just earlier this year, and it has made all the difference, frankly. It's part of its perception, Iris. I mean, when you say the word franchise to somebody, just what in your mind goes through your head. And a lot of times it's, McDonald's or, something like that, where it's a very cookie cutter, overly systemized, very controlling type of brand, or what people have the perception of. Whether that's true or not doesn't make a difference. That's the perception. Mm-hmm. And so, pivoting to a licensing model has made a big difference in that perception. And there are also, of course, functional differences as well. Allowing us to drop the licensing fee a little bit versus a franchise fee, setting up the ongoing support and payments for that support in a different fashion than a royalty payment. And they are really, truly, I always say there was 50 different 1 degree differences between the two, but when you add all 50 of those up, it makes a 50% difference in the perception and the implementation of the model. And so it was a great decision for us. And again, we've really had a lot of traction since the beginning of the year and shifting to that model.
Wonderful. Excuse me. I would love to focus a little bit on what you brought up earlier around your overall goal to help 20,000 women launch or create their businesses. And do you do that both through the licensing model, where you license to women who want to open co-working spaces?
Yes.
Do you also do that through specific programming that might be specific to a region of the world? Or would you leave that up to the person licensing? So, for instance, if you were to open a co-working space in, say, London, women might have a certain need in London. A Hera Hub open in a city in India might have a very different set of needs. The women there, the women entrepreneurs, might have a very different set of needs. So will the focus on resources for those women come from Hera Hub itself, your corporation, or will it come through the local licensor or licensor?
You got it, licensee. Yeah. So to answer your question, there'll be the majority of that will come through the local licensee. So we build the structure and the framework and make sure that the systems and the processes and the software and the CRM and everything is running smoothly, and we give them a set of tools to implement education. So we do strategic planning days. We have a number of what we call plus programs that are small bite-sized snippets to help move somebody along the chain of launch or growth of their business. But a lot of the education, support, and resources, Iris, comes from the members themselves. Mm-hmm. We do something a little differently than some other incubators, accelerators, or co-working spaces in that a lot of people bring in outside experts to be entrepreneurs in residence or something like that. We really look to bring in and make sure that our membership base can provide those tools and resources for the community themselves. Yes. So it's more the Jim Collins, get the right people on the bus and build a strong platform where they can share their experience with the community and help teach and nurture the community. And so it's going to be, it is going to be different in Stockholm, Sweden, to some extent. But that's why we have an amazing woman named Sophia Renemar, who is our licensee there, who is a leader, a connector, and we believe the right person to bring the right people to the table to be able to create that strong platform that can support the community as women launch and grow their business.
Wonderful. I love that. And I really love that you're creating a strong, what I refer to as a strong business ecosystem or a healthy business ecosystem. I also, when I was a community manager, really focused on enhancing the transparency into the entrepreneurs that were in the space and really looking into the space to find the experts. Because I think that builds stronger relationships amongst the members. It allows that entrepreneur to showcase what they're doing, which may also make them stronger in what they're doing. If they have 50 members giving them feedback and taking their class and providing feedback, how valuable is that? So I love that you're using that as your sort of mode for building your programming. And so how do women find you if they want to open a co-working space and they decide that they would like to have the model set out for them so that they can focus on building the community? How do they find you?
Yeah, just through our website. So herahub.com, there's a link for expansion and lots more information there on what the model looks like, what resources and support that's provided. We take folks through a 4-week market assessment program that are interested to really help give them the tools to look at their area. Are the demographics right? Are there spaces that meet the requirements and are at a reasonable cost? And we help them run the numbers. We do financial projections with them so they can really get a good sense, is this the right decision for them and for the community? So that's certainly a great way to get started.
That's wonderful. I really am impressed with operationalism that you have there, that you're able to help decide if this is the right move to take. And so do you do outreach to female entrepreneurs, or is it really just an organic search where somebody decides, I want to do this? Is there any place out there that I can do this through?
Yeah, thus far, because we've been focused on continuing to make sure our systems and processes are top notch, and I'm still actively own and obviously have an amazing team, but I'm very active in our 3 locations here in San Diego. So no, to answer your question, we haven't done a lot of targeted outreach yet. That certainly is coming. Thus far, the folks that have connected with us have found us through podcasts or interviews, or just simply a Google search. They're searching around and they find us and they reach out. So we've been blessed so far to have that opportunity to share the ideas.
I love it. Okay, tell us, what's your favorite co-working magic story from Hera Hub?
So many. I'll point to, this is a story that I point to often just because this member I've known for quite some time. I knew her prior to launching Hera Hub through some of the organizations I was involved in. Her name is Nicole McDonald, and she's the founder of a product that she manufactures called the Sash Bag. And she went from launching another handbag line before Hera Hub that didn't make it, to joining Hera Hub and launching another different concept, another handbag line, and finding investors, finding business partners, finding her board, finding Brian Smith, her mentor from UGG Boots, through Hera Hub. I mean, pretty much every aspect of her business has been built through the Hera Hub community, and now she's selling handbags all over the world. She just, I'm sure she'll break well over the $1 million mark this year. She probably did in the first 6 months, and she's just absolutely killing it.
Wow, that's amazing. I love those kind of stories. They warm my heart very much, so, as you can tell. Yeah. A little crying going.
Oh, awesome. See, this is why we have Hera Hub, because you can cry. It's okay.
Yeah, I'm a crier. I'll just put it out there.
Good. Okay. All right. Perfect.
Wonderful. Well, Felena, what's next for you?
Yeah, it's just continuing to focus on supporting some of these cities around the country and the world that are looking to bring the model to their city. And I'm excited. I love to travel. I'm like a travel fiend. And the fact that I've been sort of stateside for the last 5 years, been out of the country just once to Greece last year, I'm just chomping at the bit. So I'm really, really excited to bring this not only across the US, but to other countries.
Wonderful. Well, if you need a traveling companion or suitcase filler, just call me up.
Perfect. Awesome. You're hired.
Thank you so much for speaking with me today, Felena. It was wonderful, and good luck. And I'm really excited to see Hera Hub starting all around the world.
My pleasure.
Well, thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Coworking with Iris. And and next week, I will be talking with Ashley Proctor of Juicy Canada. Actually, Ashley Proctor of many things, but we will be talking about the upcoming Juicy Canada conference, which if you're not going to, you absolutely should be. So please tune in next Friday morning at 10 a.m. and I will see you then. Thank you.